Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started as people are still entering the room. Welcome to our first session on this beautiful Tuesday. I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker of the day, June Jewell. She's a CPA, business management consulting for the architecture and engineering industry, and author of the best-selling book, Find the Lost Dollars: 6 Steps to Increase Profits in Architecture, Engineering, and Environmental Firms. Now, for over 25 years, she ran a successful business and Deltech consulting practice, is now working with AE firm leaders to help them improve their processes and systems, giving them the tools they need to be able to hold their employees and managers accountable. It's a key word right there, to increase profitability. And another key word, profit. So June is the president of AEC Business Solutions, offering business assessment tools and business management training programs designed to help AE firms increase profits and groom their project managers and future leaders for success. And June and I go way back, actually. June, you and I, this is our 8th conference. My very first Zweig group conference, Hot Firm is what it was called back in the day, 2013. Who would have thought we would be doing this virtually in 2020 and not be able to gather in person? But so I am just delighted to hand it over to June for her session today, bottom-up leadership. Very important topic.
Thank you so much, Chad. I'm excited to be here. Would have been probably more exciting to be all together and having our wonderful conference, but I'm very excited. We have a very large group today. I'm sure that this is a popular topic and an important topic. And my goal today is to really give you all some new perspectives, new ways of looking at your staff and thinking about how you develop your staff and how you lead them. We're going to start out talking about what is bottom-up leadership. It's not a really common term. I actually made it up myself. I'm an accountant, and I always talk about bottom-up budgeting and bottom-up estimating. And I thought, well, this is really bottom-up leadership. Is the way that I recommend that our clients engage with their employees. I'm going to give you some important reasons why you should think about shifting your business towards a bottom-up process and a bottom-up management style. How do you do that? How do you transition from a top-down to a bottom-up? The majority of firms in the A&E industry are definitely top-down leadership, and we're going to really go through the differences and distinguish how they are so different and how can you get from one to the other. I'm going to give you some examples of some firms that have done that. And then we're going to, I want you to think about your own firm's leadership style. And there is a worksheet that's available. And, I forgot to ask Olivia about that, whether it's available for you to download, but I have a worksheet for you that you can assess your own firm's leadership style and see where you fall in terms of moving your firm towards a bottom-up leadership process. So I'm going to assume most of you, depending on your age, how long you've been in the industry. I've been in the industry over 30 years. And most of you probably grew up with a top-down leadership style. And the top-down leadership style was your leaders made all the decisions. Very often it felt like it was behind closed doors. They were sneaking off with the E-team and making all the decisions and announcing the decisions to the team. The leaders had the ideas, and the leaders developed the business processes and basically announced them and rolled them out to the employees. Employees weren't usually asked for a lot of feedback about how to run the business. There was actually an assumption made that the employees didn't really know much about how to run the business. And in some cases that is actually true. But how did the leaders learn how to run the business? Most of the employees were not educated on business until they were many years into their career. And for those of you who grew up like this, you probably learned a little bit every year. Sometimes I like to say in the school of hard knocks. And it came in bits and pieces, and your evolution of understanding how to lead and how to run your company grew over time. Financial information in the old days was not shared readily. That is something that has changed quite a bit. Even in the last 10 years, it's changed dramatically, but I still run across a lot of A&E firms that have a long way to go. And so most of you probably grew up in a situation where it was kind of a need to know basis. And you got bits and pieces of financial information. And as you progressed through your organization and grew up, you had access to more information. And you basically had to climb the corporate ladder. Well, what does that mean? Well, the corporate ladder means that every year that you're with the firm, you had access to more and more information. You had access to more responsibility. It really wasn't always based on your performance or your capability and skill sets as much as it was climbing the steps along the ladder that you had to climb. And in some cases, this may have been very frustrating for some of you. And if you were a superstar, you may have felt frustrated. There may have been times in your 20s where you thought to yourself, boy, I've got a really great idea about how this company could be better, but nobody is asking me about that. And the philosophy that kind of reigned over everything that was done is that's the way we've always done it. When you would ask somebody, well, why do we do our, billing this way? Why do we do our reporting this way? It's, well, we've always done it like that. That's how it was when I got here 10 years ago. So there wasn't a lot of change, and change came difficult. It was difficult to implement. And you may still feel that way sometimes. You may still feel like it's difficult to implement change. And actually, in a top-down leadership management style, change is much more difficult. And here are the reasons. Number one, you have low buy-in. There's a lot of resistance to change. And many of you have experienced that. As Chad mentioned, I implemented Deltec for 25 years and worked with hundreds and hundreds of A&E firms. And one of the biggest challenges that we had and still have is trying to get people to use the system. And they resist. And I have a whole presentation I do just on change management, because there are a lot of great ways to address this issue. But bottom up leadership will make a huge impact on gaining buy-in. Another huge problem with top-down leadership is employees don't readily adopt your processes and systems. And that's because of their resistance. And they think they have a better way of doing things. So they tend to do things their own ways, or they don't keep your system updated frequently, or they have their little workarounds. Another big, huge problem with top-down leadership is your employees actually have some good ideas. And again, if you think back to when you were younger, I'm assuming some of you probably are younger and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I have some great ideas. And those of you who are more seasoned like I am, you might be thinking, yeah, that's just the way it was. And you had to work your way up the ladder. They don't really understand the why behind. Why is the leadership team asking us to do this or to do that? Why do they keep doing this and that over again? Why do we have so many problems implementing our CRM system, for example? They just don't get it. They don't understand why things are happening in the firm. It'll also create something that has a huge impact on your firm is low engagement. Your employees check out sometimes, and it creates turnover. They want to be in an environment where they have some say. And when we were all younger, we kind of went with the flow. Remember, go with the flow. and they don't want to go with the flow anymore. And we were leaking profits. Top-down leadership does not enable you to really shore up all of the areas of your business that are leaking profits and where your employees can help you close those leaks and stop money from leaking out of the business. So there are some significant problems with top-down leadership. Now, many of you recognize that times are changing. Our younger staff seem like they are really different than we were. And I think a lot of that has to do with social media. It has to do with their exposure through the internet to a lot more of other industries, and what other industries are doing and how other industries manage their employees. And they are asking for change. One study I found, a Deloitte study of millennials and Gen Z, shows that there are a lot of attitudes that are different in the young groups than you might expect. So some of these actually really surprised me when I found this study. I thought it was quite interesting. They want less focus on you talking about profit. And any of you who know me, you know that's what I talk about a lot. And I'm going to tell you how to get around this, by the way. They want less focus on generating profit. They want less discussion about producing and selling services. And they want less focus on efficiency and better ways of doing things. So all of this seems incredibly counterintuitive, right? Especially if your employees, architects and engineers, are natural born problem solvers. So you would think that doesn't really make sense. But they want more focus on generating jobs, improving society, reversing climate change, sustainability. They want more diversity and inclusion and innovation. And so the first clue I'll give you about how to marry these differences of focus is tying back to them that the only way that you can generate jobs and improve your community and the climate and have a more innovative organization is to make a profit, and that's the purpose of making a profit. And that and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but they need to see that connection, and very often they don't. So I want to make one other point. If any of you are complaining about the young people, that means that they are also complaining about you. So don't forget that. And what you want to do is come together instead of the older, more mature people complaining about the younger folks and the younger folks complaining about management and the way they do things. What you want to do, and that's really the secret behind bottom up, is to bring the groups together and work through these differences. There are a lot of other things that are influencing the way that your young people think. I remember I sat down with someone recently, a young guy in his late 20s, and he said to me, "My goal is to make $1 billion." And I had never actually heard somebody say that, especially someone in their 20s. But I thought that was an interesting perspective that he had, that was attainable to him. That was something that was doable. It was possible. And we all know how hard it is to run a business and to make money, especially in the A&E industry. But what they see are these startups that get created out of, great ideas. A light bulb goes off. I have a great idea. I'm going to create a startup and I'm going to grow it and sell it in 5 years for $1 billion. And the fact is that does happen. It happens in Silicon Valley. It happens, it's not easy, and probably only one out of several hundred startups actually makes good money. But they don't see that. They see companies that entrepreneurs starting businesses and making a ton of money in a relatively short period of time. So they don't have a lot of tolerance for this long career ladder that is going to take them forever to climb. And so that's a different perspective that you have to be aware of, is that in the back of their mind, they could be thinking, I'm just going to go out and do this myself. And so even it can be very important for them to get a taste of how hard it really is. Now think about when they got out of college, many of them, the younger people, they went straight into probably working in your business or another business and then came to work for you. And they didn't know what a business really was. There's no business training in college. In college, they focus 99% of their time on the technical skills that they needed to be able to design projects. And so when they get out of school and they go to work in a business, they don't have the skill sets to understand how the company makes a living, how projects can be profitable, how to have conversations with clients. All of those things are things that they have to learn over time, but they don't understand the aspects of working in a business. And I believe the sooner that you can give them that, the better. And that's really what bottom-up leadership is all about. So let's take a look at what bottom-up leadership really is. In bottom-up leadership, your employees are actually included in your business decisions. They actually can help you develop and implement new business processes. And they may have ideas that you don't even have. Employees are asked on a regular basis for their feedback. How can we be a better firm? And it's hard to gain the perspective of what it's like to do business these days, or to come up, I should say, through the ranks if you're a younger person, and understand, what they might be struggling with. The employees are educated on running a business early in their career, and not when they've kind of hit that career ladder of 8 years, 10 years, or whatever age that is that you have deemed that they need to start being a project manager. Because that's what happens in about 90% of the firms out there, is employees, until they've hit maybe about 8 years, they really have a very little understanding of business, how the company makes a living, how projects make money, all of that. Financial information is openly shared in a bottom-up company. And it's not just need to know, it's here's how we're doing. And in a minute, I'm going to go over some of the benefits of doing this. And some of you have already experienced that probably. And most employee-owned firms are already sharing a lot of information and probably already seeing the benefits of open book management and extreme transparency. And for those of you who aren't, I recommend that you really look into it and talk to other firms that are doing it, because it can be highly successful. And more importantly, in a bottom-up leadership environment, there is a culture of continuous improvement and accountability. And so continuous improvement does not mean that, once every 5 years you get some training on a system, or, our processes don't change very often. No, we look at things on a regular, consistent basis to see how they can be better. And again, the employees are included in those conversations and actually in the implementation of these business practices. Now, this is something that I do with my clients. I have a whole program that I've developed around implementing this process. And it is remarkable the difference in how your employees will behave on a daily basis after they have been exposed to this. They really feel empowered, and it's exciting to see the difference in how they talk and think. There are an incredible amount of benefits you can get from bottom-up leadership. You're going to get much more buy-in whenever you're going to implement a new system, you're going to change something, leadership transitions, new processes. They're much more likely to adopt your processes and systems. For those of you who struggle with getting people to do timesheets, getting people to update their opportunities in your CRM, getting your PMs to manage their budgets and schedules in your system, get their billing done on time, all of those types of things. Those are typical struggles that most firms have, and you will see a remarkable improvement in your employees' adoption of your processes and systems. One reason is because they understand why you're asking them to do things, and they're also have helped create them. Another benefit is you're going to get great ideas. In a sec, I'm going to give you an amazing example of an engineer who had some great ideas for his company and really made a difference in the firm. They're going to understand the why. And whenever somebody understands why something is important, they're more likely to go along with it. They're more likely to adopt it as their own behavior and philosophy and their values. And that's really a lot of what this is about. It's aligning your values. You're going to get much higher engagement from your employees and retention. My program that I have is called the Find the Lost Dollars program. And at the end of my program, employees are walking around the office saying, I found some lost dollars. I think I have an idea of how we can find some more lost dollars. That is how you know your employees are engaged. They are actively trying to help the business to be successful. And that is going to lead to higher retention. Employees, when they feel empowered, when they feel that they're being heard and listened to, they have a voice in what's happening. They're also going to be a lot less frustrated, because right now, if you're not doing everything you can to help improve those processes and systems, your employees may be frustrated. You don't know if you're not asking them. And then they will embrace and expect change. And change management is a difficult thing. Earlier, I mentioned resistance to change. Anytime that you implement something new in your company, you can expect resistance. Resistance is natural and normal. And so what you want to do is create a culture where employees handle that kind of change much easier. And when you're asking them for feedback and you're asking them to participate in the implementation of the change, then they get excited about it. It becomes their project instead of your project. One other benefit I have here that I didn't put on this list is that, and I work with a lot of CFOs and C-suite leaders. And what I find is the C-suite tends to take on a lot of internal projects. They always have so many projects going on. You know, you do a strategic plan, and then you have to implement that plan. And there's all this long slew of action items. And it seems overwhelming, the number of things that need to get done. And what I have found is with bottom-up leadership, you can engage lower levels of people in your company to help you implement many of those action items, take the weight off the C-suite, and a lot more things will actually get done. It's remarkable. And I've seen this across the board with many firms that I've worked with. And we've been able to get 3 major initiatives per quarter implemented. And right now, most C-suite leaders don't have time to do that, especially the CFOs. If you're doing acquisitions and other things like that, your CFO is already probably buried. So expecting all of these complex internal initiatives to get implemented like new performance management plans and things like that, and onboarding new offices and teams that have been acquired. All of that is an incredible amount of work. And I have found that in a bottom-up leadership environment, you can engage more levels of people in your company to help implement those practices. So I want to tell you the story about Paul. Paul is actually my neighbor. And Paul graduated 2 years ago with a degree in mechanical engineering from Villanova. And right out of college, Paul took a job. He didn't go into the A&E industry, actually, which is disappointing, but Paul took a job with a manufacturing company. And they actually make large pieces of glass for windows for office buildings, giant pieces of glass. They manufacture them. So they have a manufacturing plant. They have big sales teams. They have all kinds of things. And so when Paul got out of college and started his job, day one, Paul was put into this company's management training program. And that's actually my first clue for all of you. He was put into management training day one at 22 years old. Think about that, because think how empowering that is for Paul to already be trained at such an early age, to be looked at that age as a possible future leader for the company. Now, I'm sure not everybody that goes into their management training makes it into being a manager in that company, but at least it lets you at a much earlier stage know who your future leaders could possibly be. So one day I got an email from Paul's mom. She's a friend of mine. And she sent me an email and it said, "Hey, June, Paul, Paul got moved around from place to place as part of this management training program. He had to spend a few months in the plant, and then he had to spend a few months in the executive office, and he had to spend a few months with the salespeople. So he got moved around a lot so he would understand everything that was going on in the company." And so I got this email from his mom and it said, "Hey, Paul has been down at the plant for about 2 weeks and he's very, very concerned that they're losing a lot of money." She said they have a lot of inefficiencies and they have a real severe quality control problems. She said, "I know that you get involved in business process reengineering and helping companies improve their processes. And I was wondering if you would like to reach out to this company and help them." And she included a list of 25 things that Paul had found that the company was doing that he believed were problems. And they had a lot of rework going on. They were wasting a lot of materials and they had serious quality issues. And he was observing very carefully what was going on. And he saw and documented all of these problems. And I wrote back to his mom, Pat, and I said, "I recommend that Paul takes this great list that he has made and go straight to the CEO of the company and tell the CEO what he has found." And Paul went ahead and did that. And he instantly got a promotion. Now, realize Paul had only been in that plant for 2 weeks. He had very little experience, but he was smart enough to identify problems when he saw them. And I actually believe that many of your employees may be recognizing problems when they see them, but they're not telling anybody about it. Maybe they're intimidated. Maybe they don't feel like the culture is open enough to be able to have those kind of conversations. Maybe they're kind of passive aggressively mentioning it to somebody else at their own level, like complaining. There could be a lot of things going on. But what you want is someone like Paul to feel empowered to come to you and tell you the great ideas that he has and help you stop leaking all of those dollars. So right away, Paul had made himself an incredibly valuable employee. So how do you implement this bottom-up leadership? I want to give you some kind of steps to follow. And again, there is a worksheet that you can get, and we will make it available for you to get the worksheet to fill out. It's basically just grading your company on each of these things that I am going to bring up, so that you can kind of get a feeling for maybe what you would like to work on first to try to move your company towards a bottom-up leadership type of culture. So first thing you need to really understand are, what is your mission, vision, and values? And do all of your employees understand them? Do they agree with them? And do they align with them? Very often, one of the things that I see is that the company has values, strong values, but they're not really aligned across all of the employees. And if you really want to get the kind of behavior and buy-in from your employees that you need to be successful and grow and avoid problems, and is to make sure that your employees share your values. And that really starts as early as when you hire them, and making sure that those values are carried through everything that is actually done on a daily basis in your company, and that there's not some disconnect between what your values say and what is really going on, because that can derail your growth. It could cause employee turnover, and it can cause problems with clients, honestly. It's also important to really understand your mission. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that employees, they want to be in a purpose-driven company. They want to feel like the company that they're working with is, saving the world, saving the environment, is sustainable, is a fair and open company to work for, and is innovative. And one thing that I believe is really, really important is to tie your mission to your profit. In other words, sometimes when I tell people that my training program is called Find the Lost Dollars, they kind of stand back a little bit at first and say, well, I don't want to emphasize profit. I don't want to make it seem like we're greedy or that's all we care about. And this is where you can connect the dots for your employees. You can't have a successful business without profit. You can't help your community without profit. You can't be innovative. You can't invest in the future. There's so many things that profit enables your firm to do, including achieving your mission. And so connecting those dots is very, very important, because if you're talking about the mission on one hand and your profit as a separate thing, it may appear to your employees that those two things are not in alignment, when in fact they really need to be, and they need to be discussed in that way. The next thing is an aligned leadership team. Now, I work with leadership teams every single day, and I find that the single biggest problem of most A&E firms achieving their goals is a lack of consensus among the leaders. Ensuring that your leaders are talking the talk and walking the walk every day in agreement with each other, about what's important, about how to treat people, about how to spend money, about what kind of clients you want to have and work for, about what kind of projects you want to have, everything. And if you're not in alignment, then my number one recommendation to you would be to focus on this first, because it's very clear to employees when the leadership team is not aligned. They see that. They get mixed messages. For example, when I was implementing Deltek systems, we would go in and we would, train the employees and tell them it's very important to do your timesheets every day. It's very important for you to do this, to do that, and emphasize in messaging to the employees what was expected. But then when the principals of the firm didn't do their timesheet, and when they didn't update their project budgets, and when they didn't, or they didn't hold people accountable for doing those things, then there's a mixed message there. And your employees are hearing that mixed message, and they're deciding whether they think what you're asking them to do is really a requirement, or it's maybe something you're suggesting that is never going to be held accountable, and it's not that important. And so really get your leadership team on the same page about your messaging, about how you hold people accountable, and everything that you do. And that is going to make a huge difference with getting buy-in from your employees and seeing the way that they respond and how they work on projects and do things every day. And then the next thing is your culture. And I like to define culture by what you talk about every day. Culture are the things that you say to people. So what are you saying to people? And what do you hold as being the most important values? Is it quality? Is it being reliable? Great customer service? Is it being smart and technically proficient, dependable? We have great client relationships. I see that one all the time. If you just go to your About Us page on your website, what does it say about you and your firm? And do you talk about being financially responsible? And I find that a lot of firms are afraid to talk about that in the same way that they talk about quality or keeping a client happy or being reliable. And that's a struggle that many employees have. They have a hard time, on the one hand, over here hearing, well, there's this budget and the client doesn't have any money to spend. But we have to have the highest quality and all of that. So making sure your employees understand what's really important and communicating that in such a way that it's getting the results that you want and you're getting the behavior that you want from your employees. What is the focus of where your attention is going every day? I recommend that you have a methodology to have a strong focus on business success. As I mentioned earlier, your employees get out of college. They don't really understand the challenges of being in a business. I believe that's one of the benefits of having a management training program that starts the day they start working at your firm. Understanding that they now work in a business, and these are the things that happen in a business. We have timesheets. We have to get invoices out. We have to collect cash. Our clients have budgets. They don't have unlimited money to spend. And so part of our job as a successful designer, architect, engineer, environmental consultant is to make sure that we can deliver what we promised and inside the client's budget, because it's their money and it's their budget. Making sure that that's a real focus for your employees and that they understand that that is very, very important. I feel like most employees don't ever hear that until they're 4 or 5 years or more into their career. And then get feedback from your employees. Ask them, what is working for you? What is not working for you? What are we doing well? What do we need to work on? I have an actual business management assessment survey that I give anonymously to employees that allows you to, at a very detailed level, get detailed feedback about how the business is operating in 9 areas of the business, and um, really gives you tremendous insight as to where they're struggling, where they're confused, um, what they know and don't know, where they need more training, where they need more insight, better communication, all of those type of things. So getting feedback is very, very important. And it also gives them a voice. It gives them a vehicle in which to tell you all their great ideas, what they really think and how they really feel. And at the same time, they're offering to help. They're helping you to get improve the business. And then also give feedback. Sometimes, the younger generation, when you think about it, they're used to, and a lot of jokes are made about this, but they get the participation trophy, right? They play soccer, and even though they're the worst kid on the team, they still get a trophy. Kids today are used to getting feedback, instant feedback. They go on Instagram, they like things, everything gets liked. They're used to seeing feedback regularly, quickly, and often. And so if you're not giving them feedback on a very frequent basis, that is very difficult for them. The younger people want feedback, and learning how to give feedback is actually something that's very, very important. I run across firms that struggle with giving feedback, and sometimes they struggle because there hasn't been a lot of structure around it. Recognition is one type of feedback. There's also constructive feedback, and there's very structured performance feedback. But there's different types of feedback, and it's very important to give that to employees in such a way that it's going to help enhance their motivation, their skill sets, and help them to improve. And then raise your employees' business acumen. I love this quote from Steve Jobs: "A small team of A+ players can run circles around a giant team of B and C players." Really, none of us want B and C players. If day one, when you hire a new employee, you want all your employees to be A players. And obviously they're not all going to be A players, especially when you get super, super busy and you're hiring quickly to fill roles, and you have such demand for to hire. What ends up happening is sometimes you don't end up getting all A players. What I have found is by giving employees higher business acumen, that can help compensate for areas that they may be weak in other areas. It'll also help you identify those people who are going to be better business leaders in the future, who are going to be better project managers someday, and maybe people who you'd like to accelerate their career path. We talked earlier about the corporate ladder, and I don't see any reason why somebody who's very young could not be a project manager at a much younger age. Now, maybe they do need to develop their technical skills further and have more interaction with a technical person who is more experienced. But from a business standpoint, the business side of project management often is the last to be learned and the last to be done because of how busy they are. So having people who are better on this side of managing projects, the business side of managing projects, the financial aspects, can really boost your project success. We talked a little bit about transparency, but I'm a big believer in full transparency. I know that a lot of the consultants at Zweig are big believers in open book management and transparency. And it's, you know, if you're not sharing information, then people are guessing. And very often, as part of our business management assessment, what I find is that the executives in the firm think they're sharing more information than, say, the project managers. When I ask the project managers what they think, they often say they're not getting the information they need. Whereas when I ask the executives, they say, oh, yeah, we're giving them everything they need to manage their projects. So somewhere along the way, there's a disconnect. And it's a very important difference. And when somebody feels like they're not getting the information they need to run their projects, that becomes an excuse for not managing their projects. And also realize that in order to share valuable financial information with your employees, they need that business acumen, because you can share a financial report with them, but if they don't understand the terminology on that report, if they don't understand what those metrics mean, if they don't understand where the data came from, how it was calculated, or what to do about it for that matter, then it's useless giving them a bunch of financial reports. I see a lot of firms giving project managers a whole slew of financial reports at the end of every month. But they don't understand what they're looking at. They don't understand, well, what is WIP, backlog, compensation, contract value, spent, billed to date, revenue. There's all these terms that pop up on these financial reports. And I even challenge many people in your accounting department don't even have an agreement on what all of those terms mean. It can be very difficult. What's the difference between build and revenue? What is estimate to complete? How many of your people really understand that? So keep in mind that if you're just being transparent, that training them on the business acumen side of things is very important aspect of being transparent. They need to know what all these things mean. The next recommendation for implementing bottom-up leadership is to create a culture of continuous improvement. Continuous improvement looks like people, process, and technology are aligned with each other. And notice they're in the middle of that there's a sweet spot, and that's where your ERP system can help guide all of those things. It's not the answer for everything. It's not the be all end all, because if nobody uses it or understands it, or there's no set adopted processes in place that need to be followed, you're going to have inconsistency, you're going to have silos, and you're going to have disappointing financial reports because they're not accurate. So you have to have this alignment between how you develop effective business processes, documented business processes, how you implement your ERP system, and then how you train people and expect them to use it. And this can make a huge difference, not only in quality control, but in profitability and efficiency and client satisfaction. And continuous improvement means you're always looking for a better way to do something. And there's an expectation that, okay, just because we do things a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that's the best way. As your company grows, as you update to different systems, as your leadership changes, as you have turnover in your company, every change that occurs in your business creates an opportunity for improvement. And there should always be a way to look at how you're doing things and how it could be better. And it usually can be better. That's where I always find all the lost dollars. So the last item is accountability. And to me, accountability is keeping score. And if you think about it, your top performing employees want accountability. They crave accountability. And on the opposite side of that, your top performing employees get really annoyed when there is no accountability, because they're working their tails off they're performing, they're doing a great job, and they see others in the firm that get the same bonus structure and rewarded the same as them for doing an inferior job. And so all accountability is actually a very, very positive thing. It can be framed in your business as a way to reward people for their performance. And that's how it needs to be rolled out to people. It also means that there's consequences. And so, for example, somebody doesn't follow the rules, they don't do their timesheets, they don't do things the way they're supposed to, there's a consequence to that. It's a natural consequence. It's not a punishment, it's a consequence. Because when they've been educated on the business and they truly understand the why, and they truly understand how to measure their own performance, and they truly understand the value of what you're asking them to do, then there's no excuse for not doing those things that are going to drive the business success. And again, when they're asked for their own feedback and they've given that feedback and their ideas have been implemented, again, there's no reason why they wouldn't follow their own suggestions. And your best employees always will. So accountability is a positive thing. And pretty much none of these things we've talked about can be implemented without accountability. Because without accountability, you just have, if you have 100 people, you have 100 people doing whatever they want to do. And that is not the best way to do something. I have a philosophy, and that is that high profits equal happy employees, and happy employees equal high profits. And those two things can drive each other. And when the employees can see the connection between what they do every day and how that drives profit for the firm, and how driving profit for the firm makes them happier, whether it's career opportunity, higher bonuses, and other things, achieving the company's mission that they care about, then that will make them happy. And when they're happy, your company will be more profitable. Those two things must go together. And so those are the things that I work towards driving in every firm. Quickly, I just wanted to let you know kind of what I do, why our clients call us for help. I'm helping them hit their profit targets. Many of you probably are hitting your profit targets right now, but I'm sure many of you are also worried about next year. And so finding the lost dollars is really about making sure your company is really strong and stable to go into any kind of uncertain, unstable economic environment. If your project managers and other employees don't understand business, and you're trying to really build up that middle level of your firm to be a stronger business-focused organization, you want to improve your processes and systems. That's a big part of what I help companies to do. If you have a lot of inconsistency in your processes and you have silos and you're trying to bring everyone together to do things as one company, again, that's what this bottom-up leadership is really all about. Or if you're a newer leader and you're trying to really modernize the company and get your company to do things in a new and better way, that's something often help people with. And I'd like to offer you to get a copy of an abridged version of my book. It's a quick read, Find the Lost Dollars. Lots of ideas for how to improve profitability, how to improve your business processes and business practices. And I promise you, if you read this book, you will find lots of lost dollars. So you can go to aecbusiness.com, elevate, and download the book. And if you do that, please get back to me and give me your feedback. I always like to hear about what you think and how it helped you. And if you're interested in helping implement bottom-up leadership, I'm starting a new group next month to get employees to think like owners, implement the bottom-up leadership principles we just talked about, focus on a business-focused culture, and obviously increase your profit margins, because that's always important. You can email me at jjewell@aecbusiness.com. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have. You can put them in the Q&A box. If you think of something later, feel free to email me at any time, or if you're watching the recording today, email me and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. So,
and we did have a question come in, June, in the Q&A, if you are able to look at that.
Sure. I see a question. It says, how do you overcome feedback fatigue? It needs to be meaningful, useful, and actionable. I agree completely with that. It needs to be structured, and it needs to be structured in such a way that people are trained how to deliver feedback. There's actually a bad way to deliver feedback, which disempowers people and makes people feel bad about what they're doing. And that doesn't help anybody. So really what you want to do is get some valuable training around how to implement effective feedback, whether it's on the job feedback, it's feedback that you give that's more recognition and reward based. That's a type of feedback. And I've done presentations on how to give recognition, and that is a whole industry within itself. And then, feedback, I just think having training around it is probably going to be valuable for you if your employees, sometimes employees actually feel afraid to give feedback. And so, giving them the words and the language to use is helpful. And I have another question here. If you're a young associate at your firm and you think your firm could really benefit from this structure, how do you recommend bringing it up to your leaders? Is there a presentation or pamphlet you provide to try to get them on board? One answer I have for you is to try to get them to watch this presentation today. It's being recorded and they can watch it later on. If you get them a copy of my book and maybe even go through it and make some suggestions, there's a lot of great ideas in the book. I definitely have some, I have a blog at aecbusiness.com/blog. You can go there and there's tons of articles you can read about this kind of stuff, about how to implement many of these different ideas. But I'm excited to hear that if you're a young person that you're interested in this. That's wonderful. And I think that's what every business leader needs to hear, is that the younger people at their firm are interested in this topic. Another question from Ashley. How do you recommend incentivizing contributions from experienced staff who grew up under different management and are perhaps set in their ways or checked out? I deal with that a lot, Ashley. Sometimes I actually hear from some firm leaders that they have people they wish would retire earlier. And actually, COVID has accelerated that process for a lot of firms recently. Incentive plans need to give people, they need to get people to do the behavior that you want. So some incentive plans actually incentivize people to do behaviors you don't want. For example, I'll give you a good example of that. Some firms have an organizational structure around offices. And so they incentivize how the office did, as opposed to how the firm did or how the individual did. And so what ends up happening is when you incentivize only based on how the office did, then people hog work and they don't share work with other offices. That may not be the behavior that you want. Maybe they're not cross-selling. So you really have to sit and design a structure that incentivizes people to do all the things that you want them to do on a regular basis. So it incentivizes them to ensure that the firm is successful, that their team is successful, and that they as an individual are hitting their own individual goals as well. And that usually ends up being the best structure, but it's a little bit different for every firm. It can be you know, depending on how big the firm is and how your matrix organization is designed, there can be a lot of different ways of doing it. But you really just have to think about what is the behavior you want from people. If you want them to enter data into the system, then there has to be an incentive plan that has consequences if they don't enter their data in the system or if they don't manage their projects. So those are the type of things that can really make a big difference. Another question, what do young folks who see the marriage between technology and future AI to profit approach leadership who undervalues or unaware of both? This is really what bottom-up leadership is about. The older, more mature leaders of the firm may not be as skilled in technology. They may not understand it as well. That's where the younger people can really make a difference in the company. I'm not 100% sure how you can get them to embrace it, but I believe that communicating with them about it and trying to tie it back to their strategic goals. So most firms have a strategic plan, and in that strategic plan are strategic goals. And if you can tie the technology, the use of the technology back to the strategic goals, then most leaders will listen. They'll at least listen to some ideas. And I find that if what you're talking about doesn't tie to the strategic goals, they very often don't have time to listen to it. So if you can say, hey, you know, we have this strategic goal to go into a new marketplace, and if we implemented AI, we would be able to do that, and here's how that could work, then they might be more interested in hearing about it. So you really just have to tie it back to what they care about, basically. Those are the 4 questions that I've seen. And I do see some other stuff in the chat. I'm not sure if those are questions or not. Also, if you think of any other questions later on, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to answer them and get back to you.
Well, thanks so much, June. Great session. Thank you all for being here. Again, you can contact June at her email address here, still shown on the screen. So thank you very much for your time. Our next session has actually just started. If you're interested, Board of Directors Best Practices led by Mark Zweig. So thank you all for being here. Thanks again, June.
Thank you.
Great session. Thank
Thanks
you
so
all.
much.